Victory Seekers, you're watching Live with Onrie. I'm your host, Onrie Kompen. And this afternoon, I got an excellent guest coming back. This is the first time I'm having a recurring guest, by the way. But one of the reasons why I've decided to bring this gentleman back is because he's given me a tremendous amount of insight and introspective look of how we can evolve our model in terms of being creator-owned publishers and getting our stuff out there, making sure people see who we are, even if conventions aren't around to help give us that push. And today he's asked to come back on the show, and I've invited him to do so because, as you can see in this banner here, he's got a Kickstarter that is ending in just a couple hours here. So if you guys have time and you're watching this right now, do yourselves a favor, go to Kickstarter.com and make your pledge to Comic Unity. And let's help this guy raise some money because he's an all-around good guy. I just see him. He's handsome. You guys will see right now. He's going to win you over right here. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tom Hutchinson back to Live with Onrie. Tom, how you doing, sir?
Good. And everybody instantly turned off all their streams. Like, this guy again. No, thank you, sir.
Well, actually, we have a comment here from Kitsune Windsor, and he's saying,
"Oh, sure, I know Kitsune.
Good day to you too." So. Right on, we're getting it. We're getting warmed up here. So, Tom, you've already come on the show. You've already told us who you are. Why don't you tell us more about Comic Unity and all that's great about it?
Sure. Yeah, it's so basically, Comic Unity was an evolution of an idea that Wendy Steen Shaner had. Earlier in the year, she did a Kickstarter for her own book, Naughty Fairy Stripper Assassins, and she formatted the campaign in a way that it was kind of like a Comic-Con. So you weren't just buying the books; like there were levels, reward levels, where you could get like lanyards and badges and like those big convention bags and so on. And it was really successful. And she and I went to dinner when we were out in Arizona. And while we were chatting, I was like, "So what's happening with this convention idea you have? And what is sort of the next step? And why can't we take the idea and expand it to be even more like a Comic-Con by having more people involved, more creators, more books, whatever." We spent the next couple of hours at Red Lobster, and by the time we were done, we had kind of the foundation for what Comic Unity is. Comic Unity is the umbrella name for the event that we're doing. The actual Kickstarter is called Spin-Off Comics. Well, the Kickstarter is under Comic Unity, but the comic we're crowdfunding is called Spin-Off Comics. So if you go to Kickstarter.com, you type in the search bar Comic Unity, we will come right up to the top. You can click on it. You can scroll through the campaign. There's a lot to see. There's a lot of covers. We have an artist alley involved in the campaign where you can commission artists for certain art commissions. There are tons of variants, Steph Wilson, Steve Garvey, CB Zane, Hedwin Zaldivar, Elias Chitsudis, on and on and on and on. So there's a lot there, but the whole thing behind it was to create an event around the Kickstarter. So we've been doing live panels similar to this. We've been doing live panels with artists and guys that have Kickstarters and writers and creators. We had a cosplay thing. Incidentally, the cosplay contest is still running. If you want to vote for the cosplay contest, today is the last day. We will be tallying up votes once the campaign is over. We will be eliminating any of the backers that backed out. If they voted and backed out, their vote does not count. So if you're tallying them in your head on the campaign, that number may or may not be accurate, depending on if there are backouts, because that always happens on Kickstarter. So that's the last day of the cosplay contest. And it's been a huge success. It's been really, really fun. We've crossed 16,000. We've got about 2.5 hours to go. If we can somehow squeak out another $3,000, roughly $4,000, we actually have our final stretch goal, which will get a free metal challenge coin to everybody who is a backer of the campaign. So we have that at 20,000 if we can manage to scramble a little bit more and pull a little extra money in before we're done.
You know what, man? I gotta just tell you, I am so amazed by your ability to create incentive for people to be a part of what you're doing. And the fact that you have this clause in there that says, like, if you back out of this campaign, you don't get to be a part of it. That's a true incentive, because that always happens in Kickstarter, especially in those in that last push. And I think it's just brilliant that you found a way to reward people who stick by you.
Sure.
And it's a great idea, I think, especially with what we're going through right now. We're all missing comic conventions, and you found a way to bring it to this platform. I mean, I tip my hat to you, man. You lit that fire under my ass and got me to really get my stuff together. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Having you on this show, it's like I get another hour to pick your brain. But a couple things first, because we got some comments here. So
sure.
Windsor said that he already backed the campaign, so he's in on this. And Great. He loved your shirt. He's saying, "Nice shirt, Tom." So
yeah, this shirt is exclusive to the campaign. So if you want it, again, this is it. If you want the shirt, it's part of the campaign. You can buy it as part of a large package, or you can just buy it all by itself. When the campaign is over, these are gone. So that's it. There are no more. It's all Keith Garvey. These are the covers that Keith did for the campaign. Obviously it's just the characters. The covers have background and so on. But yeah, it's exclusive to the campaign. So if you want the shirt, today is it. That's it. Get it now or they're gone.
And we got Christopher Lee Jackson. How you doing, my brother? Do me a favor. Check out my man's Kickstarter. Just go to Kickstarter.com. Look for Comic Unity. This is part of something big here, folks. No one is doing anything like this right now, particularly on a platform like Kickstarter. And let's talk more about that, Tom. Sure. So what made you guys decide, okay, crowdfunding is the way to make this thing happen? I mean, I know you guys are doing a spin-off comics thing, but this is part of a much larger deal here. And you have a Comic Unity group on Facebook. This is like kind of like a virtual con simulation kind of a thing here. So let me ask you, what was the point when you guys said, you know what, we got to take this to Kickstarter, and and what kind of helped inspire some of the ideas that you brought together to make it bigger?
Well, all three of us, myself, Wendy Steen Shaner, CB Zane, we've all been using Kickstarter for years. So we're all Kickstarter veterans. We're all Kickstarter, I don't know whatever you want to call it, quote unquote regulars. And so for us, it just kind of made sense. Like, why don't we find a way to team up and do a larger scale event? Not just the Kickstarter itself, but actually try and create an event around it. And it was complicated. There was a lot that went into it. I mean, we worked on this for like 6 months before we finally launched this thing. And even at that point, we were still kind of like, well, what panels do we need? How do we get these people on here? It was still scrambling even after 6 months of putting it together. Now, if we were to do it again, we would have a template that we could just be like, okay, this is it. We can A, B, C, D, and we're set.
That's what you're setting up here. Like that going forward, you guys will have that now, and it's going to be even stronger the next time you do it.
Yeah, in theory, once people understand what it is that we're doing, because we've never done anything like this. This is an anthology, but it's not your standard anthology. Usually anthology is like a bunch of stories, maybe 5 to 8 pages each. This is 3 stories, but each of them is full size. So you're getting a 64-page book with 3, 20-odd page stories in it. So you're not getting caught short in any capacity here. It's a huge book. It's like, I think we have it at like $15. That includes your shipping. You're going to get all the stretch goals that come of it, which we've already unlocked 8 as of today, because the 16,000 unlocked the new magnet. So you're going to get 8 stretch goals, which include stickers and holofoil cards that are signed. You're going to get a free comic book from Jesse James Comics, who has done variant covers and exclusives with Boom and Image and Marvel and DC and Scout and all these guys. So you're just going to get a free comic, just a free variant cover just from Jesse James Comics.
From Jesse James. It was really the outlaw of the comic book industry.
Yeah. So even whatever you buy, you're just automatically getting a free bonus comic too.
That's awesome. And you know what, Tom? There's something to be said about that. Folks, you're not just getting a bunch of like free crap. Tom, for as long as I've known him and as long as I've seen his comics come out, this is the guy who's behind everything in terms of like the books that he's actually writing. And if he's involved in something, he's not just coming in there at 50%. He is going in 100%. And the reason why I know this is true is because we're cut from the same cloth. You know, if I go into something as a creator owned, I'm in there 100%. And this is 100% creator owned. This is something that is building. This is how communities are built. And Tom, you've really mastered that. And I have to tell you, I hope you won't scoff too much at my measly accomplishments, but the way I was looking at it, ever since you encouraged me to get online and start pushing, to build my following online, since we can't do conventions anymore, you said last week when you were on the show to focus on a grassroots build, mm-hmm. And once you said that, it really stuck with me, because on last Friday before I did my show, I was not in the mood. I mean, like, you had New York Comic Con going on, which for both of us, that's a big show where, that's one of those shows where you said, that's one of the shows I do every year because I have to do it.
Yeah.
And it not being there is crippling. It's crippling for all of us. And so I was just kind of like, all right, well, what am I going to do on my show? I mean, it's still not where, conventions were for me, but I knew I had to do it anyway. And I thought about what you had said earlier in the week about that grassroots, build up. Don't focus so much on what you could have done if you were in some other place, because that's a completely different arena. So I decided, you know what, just do the best I possibly can do. And I was so pleased with myself afterwards because I kept that in mind. And I have you to thank for it, because otherwise I'd be beating myself up right now. I'd be like, man, I'm not doing enough and all that stuff. And I think when you have that mindset, it holds you back completely. And I can see you just in general, like your presence. Your guy has always got a clear head when it comes into whatever it is that he's doing. How do you keep yourself focused between that, running your publishing company, having a show on the Comic Book Shopping Network, all the things that you got going on? How do you keep a calm head about it all?
It's the Mark Ruffalo answer. There is no focus. I'm never focused. I'm in the moment. I'm wherever I need to be at that time. But most of the time, wherever I am, I can tune out the rest and just be like, okay, now I'm here. I'm doing this show. 2 hours ago, I was on the Comic Book Shopping Network selling comics to 20 people. Last night I was doing this. When I'm done with this, I have a 1 hour window to go do shipping before I come back to be live with CB and Wendy, because we're going to be live for the last hour of the Kickstarter. And then once that hour is done, I go back to shipping for tonight. We have weird Tuesday night football, so I'm going to watch football while I ship comics. So that's another thing, is I have the Big Dog Ink Fantasy Football League that I run. So it's just, you can run around like a chicken with your head cut off, but the point really needs to be in whatever it is that you're doing at the moment. You need to just focus on that at that moment. Don't worry about the other things that are happening. There's always other things happening, but whatever it is you're doing at that moment, you got to focus on that. And then an hour later, you can move on to whatever else you want to work on, but knock that piece out and then, move on to the next piece of chaos that you have.
So I'm going to speak to the writer within you, because you and I are both writers as well. You do your creator-owned books, and you revealed to me last week that you write one script maybe a year. And of course, that doesn't just mean that you're not doing anything. You just described the full day. You're constantly out there promoting, you're shipping stuff, you're handling everything. You are the publisher. You are the man who has to wear all the hats. You're wearing the marketing hats. You're wearing the distribution hat, everything. So when you have an idea of when you're going to sit down and write, because for me, it's like writing is like one of those things where like the stars must be aligned, and like, it has to be like the first of the month, and like I have to be listening to goth music in my like little corner, like I just have these weird pretenses in my mind of what the perfect trying to capture that perfect writing.
Well, yeah, and unfortunately, we all have that, and unfortunately, it's all bullshit. But it's also real.
Totally is too.
It's complete bullshit. It's just what we think we need to do. It's what we think. It's all crap. But at the same time, it's all real, because I will sit and all listen to music and whatever too. Writing for me usually goes in big kind of spurts, because I will, while I'm doing other things, I'm always aware of my surroundings. I'm always watching, even if I'm driving, even if I'm at the freaking grocery store, or I'm at McDonald's or whatever. I'm aware of everything that's around me, because all of that stuff can become influence for whatever it is that you're trying to work on. The other day I was watching some stupid TV show. I won't say what it is, because there's people that like it, but it's really terrible. And I don't even know why I was watching it. It was just basically to kind of dumb my brain down and be like, okay, I got to go to sleep, so I got to watch something stupid. So I watched this show, and for whatever reason, while I was watching the show, this piece of an idea that I have, because I make these dumb posts, and then people are all like, oh my God, when's that book coming out? So I posted this thing about, I posted a picture of Sarah Underwood as in like a pirate costume or something.
Yeah, I saw this.
Yeah, and I was like, so I've never written a pirate book before either, just like another stupid, pointless conversation. And then all of a sudden everybody was like, oh yeah, pirates. And then like artists are like, yeah, I'll do covers. And I'm just like, oh my God, what is happening? What is going on? And so while I'm watching this show, my head is like somehow turns itself to the pirate thing. Like, what the hell is it? I don't even know what it is. And all of a sudden I have this, and nothing came from the TV show. Like, none of this came from the TV show. That was just terrible. But I was like, suddenly I had this spark of, oh, I know how to start this thing. I still don't know what it is, but I know how to start it, so that if I were to like put out a preview, and I did like an 8-page preview or something, I know how to do that. And I know how to do it in a way that would generate interest in that story and that character. And they would immediately be like, okay, so when's the book coming out? And I'll be like, dude, I don't know. Same time as Lingerie Wars. I don't know when this crap is happening.
Your guess is as good as mine.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but it happened. But it happened. It was just like, I have this in my head now. It's like an easy opening to pirate girl on a ship book, coming 2030. I don't know. But there it is. I have the opening now. And so now that's going to sit in the back of my head for however long it needs to, until it kind of percolates enough to become more idea and spread it out. The same thing happened with Lights Camera Jungle. The same thing happened with Kaiju Epic. I had these ideas that were in the back of my head, and I'm like, I don't know what they are. I got to figure out how to bring them forward. But it took years to develop them, until they got to a point where it was finally like, okay, I'm going to write a script based on these ridiculous notes and outlines. So, the pirates and the lingerie thing are definitely down the line, because I just have too much else in front of me. But they will be those projects in the back of my head that will slowly start to be Tetrised together until there's something of substance.
That's excellent. That's you know what I think is really cool? I think what you're doing when you post this stuff online, like, even though you're getting like an initial outburst of people who are looking for work, what I think is cool about what you're doing is you're allowing yourself to see how people would react to that initially, like the initial concept of it, which would then allow you to marinate on the idea. And that's something I don't do enough, because like for me, it's always like, I feel like I should have an idea of where I'm going, and to make the idea itself sort of an event. But I like what you're doing too, because when you just kind of put your ideas out there and let people kind of like stew on them or react to them, you're the one who's stewing, actually, not them. Yeah. They're doing the exact opposite. They see that post and they forget about it, but it sticks with you because it's your post. So by the time you announce that you're doing this book or whatever, by the time it actually comes into fruition, people have long since moved on from it, and it's fresh because it's something that's new that's coming out from you. So I think that's really cool. And, one of the things I learned a lot this year as I'm, journeying into like, doing my next creator-owned title is, you have to realize that it takes time to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's building a house out of cards, as I constantly say, and that house is constantly getting knocked down, and you have to constantly build it back up. So you're right about that too. Kevin Hines has made a comment. He says one thing at a time, and I think that was speaking to what you were saying before about where you are in the moment. Like if you're shopping, you're paying attention to your surrounding. If you're here on a show or whatever, you're focused on that. So is it easy for you to kind of like, when you have like a small allocated lot of time to actually write, is it kind of focused, or would you say that your mind's kind of like moving around a little bit anyway?
No, once you're in the script, you can't be moving. You can't. If you're writing something and you're thinking about, what's happening outside, you probably shouldn't be writing, because you're not in the space. When you're in the script, you need to be in the script, and you need to be even if you only do a page, just do the page, knock it out, get it done, and then you can go do whatever else. But you need to be in the script when you're writing, and that's kind of why you need to be, like we talked about, kind of in the mood to do it, sort of, or have enough of your notes or your head filled with the things that you need to get on the page, so that you can come in and be like, okay, it's 3 pages, and I'm knocking these 3 pages out, and nothing else happens until these 3 pages are done. You got to be in your script, otherwise it's like watching a TV show. It's why people binge now. It used to be you had to wait a week to watch a show. In a week, you've watched 8 other shows, and you're coming back to the one. You've forgotten where you were with the TV show that you watched last week, in a lot of cases. Oh yeah, I forgot this happened. Oh yeah, I forgot that happened. So in your script, if you're writing and you're on page 13, you might have forgotten what you wrote on page 8 if you take too long, or if when you're coming in, you're just kind of loosey-goosey about it. You got to know where you are. You got to know where you're going, what your next steps are for the script. Otherwise, the script is just going to be flopping around, and it's not going to be coherent. It's not going to make any sense when you finally get it done.
Yeah, I really hate that. It's like I'm going through this process right now where like I'm reworking a draft of my current script, and and you get that, you feel like you're onto something, and then a couple hours go by, or like a day goes by, and then you're realizing like that was the stupidest idea. How the hell did that make it to the page? I have to go back to that page now. I have to knock everything down. And then there are those ideas that you sometimes love, but they just don't work where you have them placed, or an idea that you think might work, but it doesn't anymore, but you're just too afraid to let it go. Do you have those kinds of moments where you're like attached to something and you're like, if I don't use it here, I'm just not going to use it at all, or maybe I'll use it later, whatever the case is? Like, do you have those like aha moments? Like, let's say you're on page 24 of your script, you're like at that end point of your single issue, and then you realize like, damn it, there's this one thing on page 16. You go and make that change on page 16, and then you realize it kind of like burns the entire bridge leading up to page 24, and have to start from scratch. Is it?
Yeah, no, I don't have those things, because 9 times out of 10, once I put it down, it's there. That's it. And that comes back to the whole just thinking about it process, because you're technically writing all the time, even if you're not actually writing. Yeah. So by the time I'm actually getting down there, now I might, as I'm writing it, I might be like, oh no, it doesn't work because of this previously, and I have to change that moment. But there's never been a moment really that I go forward that I'm like, oh, something's wrong and I have to go back. Like, that's pretty rare. I've found little tiny mistakes before, but nothing that like changed the scope of the story. I mean, basically, I would just say that if that's happening, that you're just not done with the story. You found a better way to do it, and you make your left turn and you finish the script. I mean, I've written complete scripts only to completely rewrite them again, like 100% rewrite them. Not even like, well, I'm going to go left at this time. 100% just like, that goes away, I'm going to start over. And I would rather just start over and see what that path is than worry about trying to find forks in the existing story and like, well, we're going to go, no, that someone's not going to work. Let's go this way. This is not going to work. I would rather just be like, that path didn't work. What does this path have for me? And then you can kind of compare the two final things to see, okay, yeah, no, the original was definitely better. It's more coherent. It's more focused. or the new one can be like, well, this one gives me more alternatives. This gives me more opening to expand with this character or that character or whatever. So I would just dump it in, well, not dump it. I mean, no one deletes anything they write, but I would just be like, yeah, I'm going to go a different way. But from the beginning, not really in the middle. Because if you're in the middle of somewhere, you should already be knowing where your ending is for that issue.
I agree with that. I think that's a very important point. Now, here's a question for you. Last week, we talked about business primarily. And you had mentioned that you were in college and you had a professor and he believed in you, but you just weren't, it wasn't the right model for you. And you went off to
school is not the right model for me.
Yeah. And it's not for me either, if I'm being honest. Yeah, I'm the same way. Now, here's a question for you. When it comes to writing, do you have any mentors that kind of taught you the basics of comic book writing, or are you just completely self-taught, like the dude who gets the guitar and keeps playing on it every day until
That's it. I have never been mentored. I have never had anyone read a script and be like, well. I mean, I have an editor, but she's basically a line editor. She makes sure the grammar is right, finds the commas that I miss, but she's not a story editor. She's nothing like that. So I've never had any of that. There are influences that I have, but like Chris Claremont, I think is the best I've ever seen. But I've never met Chris Claremont. He's never read any of my scripts to say, hey, Tom, I would do this, or hey, Tom, think about this. So I've never been mentored. I've never had, basically I was a D student in English. So why I'm a writer is anybody's guess.
I love it.
Okay. There's no reason I should be where I am right now.
But there's something to be said about that though. Okay. Forget about the grading BS system and all that stuff. Right? And you know what the sad thing is?
Well, no, but even beyond the grading system, I was a D student because I didn't want to read anything. I didn't care. I was so out of like the reading concept. Like, I don't want to read your book, lady. This is not what I'm here for. Teach me my ABCs, tell me how to write a proper sentence, do those things. But I don't give a damn about Tom Sawyer or whatever it is that you want us to be reading in English class. So that's where the D student stuff came in, because I was just like,
and just to be clear, so I got my 8-year-old son right here. He's just hanging out here playing Pokemon. So I want to make sure he takes school seriously. That's not.
Well, when I was
take the book seriously, you do read, you do a lot of stuff, and that brings me to my next question, because I get your point. I'm the same way. I have the same idea, but when it comes to like the actual production of a book, like the laws of publishing,
sure,
so to speak, because they exist, like you have your page one is always going to fall on the right side of the book, it can never fall on the left side. It's always on the right. So when you have that, when you have those rules, not everybody who
those are easy rules to break. They're very easy rules to break. If you really wanted to, you can break those rules. You could make your first page your credits page, and open on a double splash and just be like, boom, there you are. So I think there are guidelines. I don't think there are rules of any kind in writing, but I think that there are guidelines.
Yes. Okay. So how did you discover what these guidelines are? And
I read comic books for 40 years. That's it. Everything was osmosis. It was just purely, okay, I've read Chris Claremont, I've read Alan Moore, I've read whatever, John Byrne, I've read Ron Mars, I've read all these comics for 40 freaking years. This is how a comic book should look like. And so that was it. And now my early script, I did go because I started like 15 years ago trying to figure all this nonsense out. So there definitely, you can go online and like find people's scripts. But if you look at an Alan Moore script and you look at a Robert Kirkman script, they're vastly different. There are guidelines. There are some basics that you need, like you need to separate your dialogue and so on in certain ways. But there are vastly different ways of actually writing a script. So the most important part is simply to impart the right amount of information to your artist, because he has to take that information and turn that into a panel. And so that's the most important part, is you've got to be able to describe it enough that he can do his job, but not necessarily do it to the Alan Moore level where you're writing paragraphs of description for every panel. That man is insane. But somewhere in between Alan Moore and Robert Kirkman is where I am.
is where you fall. And it's interesting because I was involved, not anymore, with a project recently where it was the writer's first book, and he wanted to do things a certain way, but it's his first comic. He hasn't had much exposure to comics, and he hired a great art team, but we were having some creative disputes in some ways because he was constantly changing his mind about what he wanted, and it wasn't clear to me because when we were working on our script, it was, we honed it down to what it should be.
Yeah. And
then he wanted to add pages, and he wanted to put, ads at the front of the book so that when you turn to page one, which you can do anything. And that was what was so perplexing about it for me, Tom, is the fact that in my mind, I couldn't argue with him because of everything you just said. There are no laws to making comics. There are guidelines, which is kind of like the idea, but I feel like before you go and sit down and do it, you have to kind of envision what that final project is going to be like, especially once you have an artist start drawing stuff for you. Am I right?
Well, yeah. And if you don't know comics, then you don't know what a comic book is, and you don't know how it works. I mean, even with the guidelines, there are reasons that they're there. There are reasons that things work the way that they work. And if you're going to tinker with those things, you better have a reason for it, and you better be all in with your concept. I did an issue once for Penny for Your Soul that was almost all double splash pages. I was just like, screw this. I'm just going to write the biggest action-packed, most ridiculous scenes in a comic book has ever seen. And basically it was this Las Vegas scene in Penny for Your Soul #5. And we had one page as kind of the setup. Then you opened it and it was like this double splash page. Boom! All this crap's happening. And then you turned and there was like 2 pages of story. And then again, boom, double splash page. All this crazy stuff is happening. It was wild, man. And there's people that are like, well, you can't do that. That just reduces your story. And I'm like, yeah, but you also got to remember that the art is the story too. It's not just the words. Yes, it's a fast read because you're opening this and there's not
it's
7 panels per page,
Shaolin Cowboy did that,
Yeah, and so I just wanted to do something from a more visual standpoint, like more cinematic. There's plenty of scenes in movies where there's no dialogue. It's just crazy things are happening. There's explosions and whatever's going on. So I was like, how do I do that in a comic book? And I just wanted to try it. And it came out really good. I mean, I can't say it was perfect, but it came out really good. It's a very unique issue. And I haven't done anything like it since. But, there's no rules. Just as long as you can tell a story, as long as it's paced so that when you're turning the page, the reader is engaged with whatever's happening. That's really the only rule is make sure you're engaging your reader. But from there, it's kind of pie in the sky and kind of do it your way. But what you have to understand is that people that read comics have an understanding of what a comic book is. And if you give them something that they're not used to, they could just as easily reject it as come back and say, oh, he just changed comics because he does it this way versus, versus the way that you do it. But rejection can happen as quickly as acceptance. So you got to kind of find a way to, balance it.
I mean, you can get rejected when you have your own creator-owned book.
Yep.
Because rejection comes from the consumer base, right?
I don't care how good you think it is. I don't care how much your mommy thinks that you're a star. None of it matters until you put it in front of somebody who has to spend $4 or $5 on it. That's when you know if you have something that is, at least arbitrarily good.
Amen. And guys, I'm just going to say this right now, just because we're at the midpoint of our show here. Go to Kickstarter.com and back Comic Unity. All right. It's very simple. You just go to your keyboard, you type www.kickstarter.com, you type in Comic Unity in the search, and you give Tom here your money. And that's how it works. It's very simple.
Tom, Wendy, and CB.
Yeah. All the
plus, really, it's not even, you're not really giving it to us because the money goes to all the people that are doing the job. They're going to the artists and the letterers, going to the printer, and on and on and on and on and on. So it's not, you're not, for those that don't understand crowdfunding, you're not just being like, hey, Tom, here's 20 grand, have fun. Like, it doesn't work that way. I mean, all that money is essentially spoken for. So you're basically just producing the money up front for a project to exist versus us making a project, spending 20 grand, and then putting it on the market and hoping that it finds an audience. This is a more direct connection to people who understand what it takes to make a comic book, and that a lot of comics don't even get seen in comic book stores. Of the 2,500 stores that exist, which is like nothing, roughly 500 comic book stores carry independents in any sort of real capacity. So it's very, very difficult to get seen in the retail market. Kickstarter is a completely new well, it's not new. I mean, it's been around for a decade, but a completely new way to work directly with comic book fans, art fans, to create things that might not have ordinarily been created.
What I think is really cool is, going back to Penny for Your Soul #5, the book where you did all those spreads. The moment you started talking about that, I was thinking about Jeff Darrow's work on Shaolin Cowboy.
Sure.
What I really like about your concept here is when I read comics on a regular basis, I'm typically just focused on the text. It's very rare that I stop and actually pay attention to the art. So even though those books might seem like they take no time at all to read because there's nothing to read there, you're just looking at art. The writing is all in the art.
Right.
And it's in those details in those spreads. And I think good on you for thinking to yourself, I want a book that's going to grab people's attention, because if you don't grab people's attention, they're not going to read your book. They're not going to. They might give you that $5 one time because they feel sorry for you, but don't come back for #2 and beyond unless you can grab. And we're talking issue 5 here.
Right.
So we're not talking issue 1. You've already got set up. So if you have an issue 5 where there's balls to the wall action, you've probably already spent time building up to it. You had an idea of like, this is what I want to do. And now it's about the execution of it happening. And I think that's really awesome. Of course you can do this because you have an understanding of what works in comics. And that's the thing is when you first start out, I think it's so important to follow those guidelines that you're mentioning, because you don't want to have a situation occur where you accidentally put your spread starting on the right side of the page and then, have a situation where the second half is facing left side. And if you guys can't visualize that, just imagine your image, your double spread image being cut off on half the side of your page and showing up on the left. It has happened before. I don't know how often it happens, but you can't expect printers to always pay attention to these things because they got multiple jobs. You got to know what's going on. You can't just rely on your printer to fix it.
Well, and you better be proofing. Your printer should be sending you proofs, so you yourself should be able to see, whoops, something's goofy there. How do we find a way to fix it? Because there's always a way to fix it. But yeah, I mean, that's probably the only rule in comics is make sure your double page splashes start on an even page. I mean, otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah. And so Tom, you mentioned you had an editor. Does your editor kind of like check all your final production files, or are you doing that all by yourself?
No, she just does the script. I send her the script and I'm like, okay, clean this up, make sure that it's where it needs to be. And then that goes to the letterer. Letterer does his stuff, and then I proof all the stuff from there. So I basically read the whole comic myself when I get his files, and I do the approval and send it off to the printer.
So how does it feel? Like, I know how I feel when I get done with the script. I feel
it's exhausting. It's terrible. I hate doing it. I don't want to read my book again. I've already read this script 50 times. I don't want to read it again. But that's even what you have to do.
Print, though? Like, are you happy when you see it in print?
Oh yeah, the print, when you're doing it on, I can't read digital comics, so that's why it's like I'm reading a file on a computer. Like I don't care. Is this good, or let's move on. But yeah, when the actual book comes out, then I'm looking at it. Then I'm enjoying it, because that's the experience. That's what a comic is. It's the pages, and you're opening them and you're turning pages, and it's, you're engaging with what it is. So yeah, the book itself is great. It's the proofing on digital files that's garbage.
Yes, I agree with you. I hate that myself. So what would you say was one of your proudest, moments, like in terms of comics production, like when you started something, you saw it through to the end, and you saw that printed book? What are you most fond of so far with your?
It's well, I mean, there's two different answers for that. I was most proud when we finished Penny for Your Soul, because that was the first book that we did. I actually got through all 7 issues. I mean, anyone can make a comic. That's the reality. Anyone can make a comic. But to actually finish a series, most are like 4, maybe 5 issues. Mine was 7. So we got all the way through and finished a complete series. When that number 7 came out, that was like, whoa, dude, we actually did something there. There's specific issues that I'm very happy with. I'm super happy with the last Oz book that came out, The Legend of Oz: The Wicked West. We turned that into a 40-page extravaganza, and I love the feel of that book in my hands. It's so freaking heavy, and it's 40 pages, and you're just going through it. And Carlos Reno and Gat Melvin just blew that thing up, and it looks amazing. I thought the story was great. I thought it was really on key wherever it needed to be. So I love that book. But I think the best parts are when you reach your endings, even if it's just like an arc. Like, we do 5-issue arcs generally. So you do that 5 issues, we did that. We got it done. It's finished. Like that's a complete thing. That's a season, whatever you want to call it. So those are the great points when you can be like, yeah, we knocked it. We got it done. We're on to whatever's next.
That's interesting. So have you had any desire ever to, work on, you said you read all these comics for 40 years, you've been a fan, you've read, you sell comics too.
Yep.
And so you're an avid fan, just like I am. We both have collections. We're both selling from our collections. So has there ever been a point in your career, or do you ever feel this desire to work on any of these licensed characters, or to find?
Of course. The dream job is Godzilla. I mean, that's what started me in comics, and I love Godzilla regardless. So I will always chase that. I would love to work on Transformers. I would love to work on, a lot of the stuff that I grew up with as a kid. But I really have no interest in working for Marvel or DC, like zero. Sure, I'd love to put my stamp on Wonder Woman. That's not going to happen. But the way that corporate comics works, it's not for me. I just wouldn't want to even deal with it. There have been some smaller publishers that I've had some opportunities to potentially work for that I backed away from for a number of different reasons. Every time I think like, hey, because I hear some of these publishers are like, hey, we're doing, it's really hard to do this as a writer. It's much easier as an artist. But when they're actually like, hey, yeah, we're looking for writers to do this stuff, I'm like, oh, I could do that. And then I realized that I just don't want to be part of that group for whatever reason. And each group has its own reasons for me to be like, nah, I'm just not gonna fool with it. And then I always just come back around to be like, why am I doing that? Because I can just do whatever I want whenever I want to do it. I mean, there's no restrictions on me for what I do. So what's the point of working on somebody else's stuff? Again, unless it's like, I've told when IDW had the license, I told them, I'm like, look, I'll work for free. I will write you. I'll do a 6-issue story. I'll do it for free. Just call me anytime. I have it. It's still in the back of my head. I have it. It's something that has never been done with Godzilla before. Never been done with Godzilla before. And whoever has the license, which I think Legendary has it now. I don't know what's happening to it. I'll do it. I'll write it for free. I don't care. I just want the experience to say I wrote Godzilla, because Godzilla is what took me into comics. It would be that perfect circle for my career.
You know, here's something I'm wondering. Have you thought about reaching out to whoever owns the rights to it and partnering up with them in order to build up your Big Dog Ink brand? Like if you were to go,
sure. We've done that. Licensing, we were in talks to get the Land of the Lost license from Croft. But
the old ABC show?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we lost. This is a really long and painful story, but we lost it to another publisher. Publisher fucked it up, and there are no Land of the Lost comics. So we produced pages. We sent it to them. They were like, "Dude, this is really great," but we've already kind of decided to go with this other guy. And I was like, I mean, I get it. That's fine. I understand. But we took our shot. I had a pitch for Electra Woman and Dyna Girl. I had all kinds of stuff. I still do. Croft. I still do. But that's kind of, I feel like that moment has passed, especially with the sort of the flop of the movie that came out. They just are kind of backed away from everything. And I haven't really heard hide nor hair of anything from them. I know that Kathy Coleman and Wesley Urey, I know that they go around and they're touring all the time and signing autographs at shows. And I got to meet Kathy Coleman. I lost my mind when I was at WonderCon, and I was roaming around. I think I went to go see somebody that I knew, and I was coming back to the Aspen booth, and I made a turn that I didn't make on the way out. And all of a sudden I was standing next to all three of them at the land of this Land of the Lost thing. And I was like, what? Where am I? What did I just fall through the waterfall? Because what the hell is this? I had no idea that they were signing books or autographs or whatever. And I lost my crap. I couldn't do anything. I was in shock. I was like, how are these people here right now? And I had to basically like leave and go back to the Aspen booth the whole time thinking to myself, that's Holly, man. That's Holly right there. That's freaking Chaka. What is going on? And so like an hour later, I finally composed myself and I went back and I went and talked to Holly, Kathy Coleman, and she was amazing. She was so cool. And I was so freaking nervous because I get starstruck with some of these people. And I was really starstruck with that because that was such a huge part of my childhood. And she was just standing there like nobody was there. And I was like, oh my God, I have to do this. How do I build it up? Let's go. Come on. And so I did it. And I was there for like an hour with her, just chatting with her. And she was like, did you want a picture? I was like, yeah, of course I want a picture, an autograph, whatever. And so I signed, because they always charge for their signatures and stuff. And so I was like, yeah, here's the thing. And I paid her for the picture. And she was like, did you want a picture too? And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, I know that it's like $40 a picture. She's like, no, just come in here. And so she just like took a picture with the Sleestack head and me and her. And she just took the picture just like for the hell of it, didn't charge me. She was awesome. And then when we did that, she was like, yo, Wesley, and I can't think of Chaka's guy name. She's like, hey, come on, we're going to take a picture with this guy. And they were like, what's going on? They was like, come on, we're all going to take a picture. So they all took a big picture with me. They didn't charge me anything. They were just like, dude, cool, whatever. Get in here. Let's make this moment happen. So I was like, oh my God, this was a huge, huge moment. It's only happened a couple of times for me because I get too starstruck for this, but that was one of them. And I want to thank Wesley and Chaka and Kathy for that because that was fantastic.
I get starstruck all the time, even when I'm not around stars. Like if I'm genuinely impressed with the person, you know, I get starstruck with you, Tom. I mean, I know
No. I know other people that have done that too. There's a guy, Mark Baum, who invites me out to Oz, New York every year. And I mean, I've known him for like 8 or 9 years. And he's like, yeah, I'm always starstruck. I'm like, dude, we go to Red Lobster. Like we're not, what are you talking about? You're starstruck at this point. This is maybe the first year. Fine. I'll give you the first year, but I've been there for like 9 straight years. This is not a thing anymore. But like, when I first started going to shows, Jennifer Gray, and she still does these shows, but she's Wilma Deering from Buck Rogers. I can't get anywhere near her. Like I will just walk by the booth. Okay, bye.
Yeah,
okay, Are you still there? Okay. I can't get anywhere near her booth because I know I will just collapse if I get anywhere close to her. And she always smiles at me, which is funny. I'll walk by the booth and just kind of be looking, and she'll catch eyes. She'll be like, how are you? You know, just like general, like not nothing that means anything. General Khan, hey, how you doing, stuff, and I'll be like, hi, okay, and then run away, and I'll be scared. But I can't. I don't. She is the one that is. I can't get anywhere near her. So hopefully at some point I'll be able to break that and go say hi.
It's so cool, like just being in that environment, because I remember I was like at a Alamo City Comic-Con one year, and like I have never been closer to William Shatner in all my life. Like I ran into that guy like 10 times that weekend, and by the time you get through that weekend, it's just like you've seen each other so many times that like you just kind of do the nod, and that's everybody goes about their business, and that's really cool. Now here's another question for you. When you see something that is like something you care about and you're thinking in your head, I could do this better, like Godzilla, let's just go there, because we all know about the movie that flopped. I didn't see it personally, but I've heard nothing but awful, horrible things that have made me not want to go see it because everybody says it's bad, and a huge waste of my time, which maybe it's not. I don't know. So
all of those people are wrong.
All those people are
wrong. All of those people probably didn't see the movie. All of those people probably read the reviews, and the reviews were either there's too much human in it or there's too much monster in it. And that's why reviews don't matter, people. Stop listening to freaking reviews.
There you go.
Don't matter because they're subjective to the person who's watching it or watching it. Because there were reviews that were talking about this movie, and I'm like, dude, you did not watch this movie. You literally didn't. Even if you were in the theater, you did not watch this movie. You were on your phone because you're talking about things that don't make sense. King of the Monsters was the most perfectly paced human to monster Godzilla movie, kaiju movie, maybe ever. The effects were fantastic. Shut up about being too dark. Get over it. It's not too dark. You're just used to Showa era, old school 70s and 60s stuff where they have it out in the daytime. It was a great movie. Anybody listen, here's the thing. It's like comic books, right? If you're a comic book fan, you just go buy comics and you read comics. But for some reason in the Godzilla world, there's suddenly like a reason not to see a Godzilla movie. Like, what are you talking about? Are you a Godzilla fan? Then go see the movie. Make a judgment for yourself. Why are Godzilla fans being like, well, I'm not going to see it because somebody said? That's stupid. Go see it for yourself. That's it. I went with somebody, with two people, Mark Baum, who's a Godzilla fan, the guy from Oz, and then we took Allison Lear to go see it. She had never seen a Godzilla movie in her life, and I was like, well, I mean, I don't want to like, if you don't like the genre, then you're not going to like it. But if you want to go, I'd love to take you. And she was like, no, I'll go. And she loved it. She thought it was fantastic. So if this newbie person can come in and just be like, this is great, anybody can watch this movie and be great. Stop. People have and this goes into comics too. People have expectations of things that are very old, right? So like with comics, like when Captain America did the whole Hail Hydra thing and so on, people lost their minds because they have expectations of what these characters are supposed to be, supposed to do, so on and so on and so on. But they don't actually let the story flow and tell itself. Guys, obviously, Captain America is not a Hydra agent. Dear God, let the story play out.
Let it play out before. Yeah. And
let's find out why he said it. And the reality is that Secret Empire was one of the most science fiction comic book stories ever told, with the cosmic cube and changing realities. It's like, holy crap, that was really cool. But y'all lost your shit because he said Hail Hydra on a teaser for the next thing. It's like, oh my God, come on.
Well, anyway, I was building up to a point, and everything you said is true. We got Ed Dukeshire, famous letterer in comics, saying, now you've done it, Onrie. You don't talk bad about Godzilla.
That's correct.
Let me just write it down for the record. I was not talking bad about Godzilla because I didn't see it. I just heard things about it. That's it. I had no inclination to see it or not see it. Maybe what Tom said just now may have made me want to see it because he liked the movie. And, he's telling me if you're going to watch the movie, watch the damn movie. But what I was trying to get to, my bigger point is, when you see something that you really care about not handled right,
Yeah.
And you got this idea of making it better in your own mind, like, I got this perfect story for Moon Knight, and then you see like a Moon Knight comic come out and take that similar concept and just totally botch it, and mess it up. How do you kind of, have you ever had situations like that as a writer in your own head, and how do you rectify that in your own mind? Because
not really, because like I just said, most of the time I'm there for the ride. Like I want to know what this writer is doing. Like so the only time that, and this was really weird because it happened really quickly. And this, I wasn't even a writer at the time, but way back in the day, John Byrne came on to Wonder Woman. I was a big Wonder Woman fan for forever. I was buying the book. But years earlier, before that, I had thought to myself, hey, if I were to write Wonder Woman, what would be something that would be cool that that hasn't been done, that would make sense to the character, or so on and so on and so on. And I thought to myself, because we were going through all these deaths of this character, deaths of that character. So I thought, so if you killed Wonder Woman, what if Wonder Woman would become the goddess of truth? Because that's her whole shtick as a superhero. And I was like, I think that would be super cool to like kill Wonder Woman and have a story where she goes to Olympus and becomes the goddess of truth, and you can kind of keep going with that. Turns out John Byrne did exactly that a few years later. So, I've had my stories ripped off. No, I'm kidding. I don't know John. I didn't put that into the public. He didn't rip me off. That was his thing. But I literally just kind of let people do what they do, and I either like it or they don't. There's always, if I don't like it, there's usually something I could say, well, I would have done it this way. But again, it's not my story to tell. It's like people ragging on George Lucas for Star Wars. Screw you guys. It's not your story. Don't think it's for you. It's his story. So people rag on the prequels all the time. I'm like, yeah, they're not great. There's nothing beautiful and perfect about the prequels, but it's his story to tell. So, just let him tell it. It's like with the prequel or the sequel trilogy. It's like they're fine, but I would have just rather have had George do whatever he was going to do and let me have the George Lucas experience versus the fan fiction experience of what we got, which is all the comics are fan fiction, all that stuff is fan fiction. If it's not from George, and I realize that he has to approve a lot of this stuff, or at least he did. If it's not from George, I don't care. It's fan fiction at that point. So to me, there are 6 Star Wars movies, and there are 3 sort of filler movies that are fine on their own, but there are 6 Star Wars movies. It's like Picard. There are 6 Star Wars movies. That's, and that's it.
I agree with that. And you know what? I have to tell you, if I had something to say to disagree with that, I would. And especially when it came to the Captain America thing, because that's exactly what I was thinking. It's like, you got a new issue 1. Who gives a crap if he's going to be a Hydra agent? Let the story play out, damn it.
I get the point that they had, because here's this guy, he's American, he's been punching Hitler, he was created by Jewish dudes, Hydra is like a Nazi thing. I get the reaction, but that's the point. You're supposed to react. If you're not reacting, then what are you reading? Why are you there? If the story is not giving you happiness or fear or confusion or whatever,
lighting a fire in your ass,
then there's no point to the story. Yeah. Exactly. But in the world of comics, and that's the problem, is we've had this influx of people who are not comic book experienced. They're current comics people, and they don't understand how things, like we've talked about, the guidelines, like how things work. There is no universe on the planet where Captain America becomes a Nazi. Like, it doesn't exist. 0. There's a reason for all that stuff, and it was the Cosmic Cube. Spoilers, I mean, this was 5 years ago, so deal with it, folks. Cosmic Cube, it was this really smart thing where reality was shifting and changing, and it was a really cool sci-fi story, which is what comics are, basically. They're science fiction when they're at their best. And of course, Captain America came out the other end, and surprise! I'm not really a Hydra guy. It was just this warped reality that was happening that nobody understood or knew about, and now he's back to normal Cap. Like, duh, this is how comics work. So,
Well, Tom, I want to thank you so much for coming again and chatting with me. It's been a huge pleasure having extra time to pick your brain. And I have a feeling that we can do this again at some point because, you're one of those guys that I enjoy talking with. Now, we know where to throw money at you right now for the next couple hours. But
sure.
For those of us who are watching you for the first time on Live with Onrie, tell us where can we stay in touch with you? What's the best way to stay connected and to get connected?
So I am basically on Facebook 24/7. So if you guys have a Facebook account, you can friend me up. We have a Big Dog Inc. fan page. You're welcome to join the page. We have a Comic Unity group. You guys are welcome to use the group. Even when the Kickstarter is done, the group will still exist. It is there for creators to post their stuff. Kickstarters works, whatever they're doing. It will stay in existence as well. So join all of that. If you're Twitter or Instagram, we are on BDI Comics in both places. So super easy. And I also have a Patreon if you guys want to get in on the backstage antics of the creating of comics. Patreon.com/Big Dog Inc. We've got 32 people that are hanging out there. We have, in fact, here's the other thing I have to do when I'm done. 6 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays on Patreon. We have a exclusive Patreon story that is done there called Blue Jay, new superhero thing that we're doing. It is exclusive to Patreon. We do posts on Tuesdays and Thursdays, which means in about 1 hour, I have to get the next post up. So Patreon is super, super fun. Come join us on anywhere that you do social media. And then I will be live here on Facebook with Wendy Shaner and CB Zane in about an hour for the final hour of Comic Unity for the Kickstarter. So if you guys want to come join us and chat and ask questions, we'll be doing that in about an hour.
Tom, thank you so much. If you have just a couple more moments, do you mind hanging out backstage? I'd love to have a final word with you.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you again so much. Here's to a successful close to your campaign. I hope you reach your goal, and I can't wait to see where you go from here, my friend.
Thanks, and thanks everybody for coming.
Thanks for coming on again. All right. So there you have it, folks. We got Tom Hutchinson again. And as always, he has so much great stuff, so much wonderful insight to share with us. And yeah, there you have it. So today's a special day because you're not just getting one episode of Live with Onrie, you're getting two. So I'm coming back in a couple hours here. I got Frank Gogol from Source Point Press. He put out a wonderful book called No Heroine, and he's got a new book called Dead End Kids, which is getting a new spin-off series. He's looking for people to share the news with it. And I have been dying to interview Frank all year long, and I finally cornered him, and he is coming on the show tonight. So I will see you guys in a couple hours, and until that time comes, onward to victory.